They thought she was just another overpromoted officer, a quiet woman with no visible scars, no stories in circulation, no seal trident on her chest. To them, she was a checklist, a command placement, an easy target. So during a night rotation, they beat her, carefully, quietly. Where no cameras could see, they loosened bolts, pulled safety locks, hit just hard enough to leave bruises, but not proof. And they thought that was the end of it. But what they didn't know was that she'd been through worse, much worse, and she hadn't just survived it. She'd learned how to end a career without ever raising her voice. Now, before we show you the exact moment she turned their plan against them and brought down 3 men without ever throwing a punch, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, hit that subscribe button with the bell icon on, and buckle in, because this time, discipline didn't just win. It made sure everyone remembered why she earned that rank. The fog rolled in low over Coronado Bay, thin and fast-moving, like it was trying to outrun the dawn itself. The kind of morning where visibility sat in the gray. Not full darkness, not full light, just that in-between hour where the air tasted like salt and boot rubber and the blades of an idle Blackhawk clicked faintly in the distance. A metronome no one had bothered to stop. Lieutenant Commander Rhea Voss stepped onto the main compound grounds with her gear already strapped down. No entourage, no greetings, just a matte duffel slung tight over her shoulder and her name already posted on the assignment board in clipped black letters. Voss, our lead instructor, Combat Integration Rotation 2. A. Her uniform bore no embellishments, tan fatigues, polished boots, hair tight but not severe. She didn't wear sunglasses even in the harsh morning glare. Her expression made it clear she saw everything anyway. Behind the admin trailer, 2 instructors leaned against a shaded utility cart. One smoked, the other didn't bother to hide his glance. That her? Yep, Voss. Transferred out of some joint command thing. Nobody really knows. Figures. Probably another precision test case. Gotta fill that box somehow. Genius in a classroom. Let's see what she does in the dirt. They chuckled like they'd already seen the outcome. Inside the mess hall, whispers moved ahead of her like wake before a bow. 1 or 2 glanced at her chest where a ribbon bar might have been. Found none. No seal trident either, just the eagle and anchors of a lieutenant commander, plain and legal, when the command brief assembled on the terrace at 0700. The commandant gave her 5 sentences. 4 were procedural. The last one was more a shrug than a commendation. Lieutenant Commander Voss will oversee field integration drills for the next 6 weeks. Her rotation will focus on asymmetric combat leadership models. Her prior deployments are sealed by Joint Ops Order, and all authority granted to her is affirmed by Central Command. No applause, no nods, just silence. She stood there. Chin even. Arms at ease. Her eyes scanned the instructors, not searching, registering. One leaned slightly back like he'd expected someone taller. Another smirked when she didn't return his glance. But the third one, the one with the clipped haircut and squared jaw, name tag reading Maddox, held her gaze for a half-second too long. Not curiosity, not doubt. Just the quiet calculation of a man trying to decide whether he could break her. Rhea said nothing. She didn't flinch, didn't ask questions, just waited for the meeting to end, then walked off toward the eastern field to inspect the course layout herself. No clipboard, no assistant. The same 2 instructors from earlier now leaned by the lockers, eyes following her every step. She don't talk much. Doesn't have to. New ones always think silence is strength. The one who'd lit the cigarette smirked. Let's test that theory tomorrow. Simulation 3. After lights. And just like that, it had begun. By mid-morning, the fog had burned off the beach. The sky over Coronado was a hard, cloudless blue. Heat shimmered off the sand just enough to sting the eyes. A full unit of recruits stood in staggered formation along the shoreline, weighted vests on, breath sharp. Some bent double after the last set. Others clenched their jaws and stared straight ahead, praying she wouldn't call another round. Lieutenant Commander Rhea Voss walked the line slowly, calm, Clip in hand, stopwatch silent. The rhythmic crash of waves behind her gave the illusion of peace, but every recruit's heart raced like a drumline. Front row, she called, voice steady. Bear crawl to the shoreline and back. Clock starts when the first elbow hits the sand. A few groaned under their breath. Before the order could fall into motion, a voice cut through from the rear. You planning to run this like a beach yoga retreat, Commander? It was Maddox. He stood near the water trailer with arms crossed and sunglasses half slipped down his nose. Like every minute here was a waste of his time. His uniform looked freshly pressed, the kind of man who polished his boots more often than he trained. Rhea didn't turn. She looked forward, raised her voice only slightly. Excuse me? Maddox stepped forward, loud enough now for the recruits to hear. I said, this pace, these drills, half the kids here did tougher warm-ups in high school wrestling. A few of the trainees chuckled, nervous, uncertain. Rhea pivoted finally, walked toward him. Her steps didn't rush. Her clipboard still hung loosely by her side. She stopped just outside of arm's reach. Her tone never shifted. What's your proposal, Sergeant? Maddox smiled, tilted his head. Maybe give them something real. Something that'll separate leaders from fillers, unless we're aiming for a participation trophy this week. No one breathed. Rhea glanced at the line of recruits, then back to Maddox. Sergeant Maddox, she said, crisp now. You're assigned as support for the next 3 days. You'll run the shoreline rep for row 2. 10 laps, weighted packs. Every time someone drops, you double back and escort. Maddox's smirk faded. That's not... It is now, she cut in. Unless you'd like to contest my authority. In front of trainees, during operational rotation, shall I record your objection for the oversight board? The pause was surgical. He blinked, adjusted his shoulders, then offered a tight nod. No, ma'am. She didn't thank him, didn't even acknowledge the shift, just turned back to the recruits. First row, go. As they dropped into motion, sand flying from boots and elbows, Maddox watched her walk past. Not a single muscle in her face moved. She hadn't raised her voice once, and yet somehow the entire formation now looked at her differently. He muttered under his breath to the instructor beside him. She thinks she's in charge now. Then, just before turning away, added low, we'll remind her this ain't a lab coat job. And the other man gave the smallest nod, enough to say, tonight then. The lights inside the instructor ready room flickered overhead. Cheap fluorescents. One always buzzed faintly above the weapons rack. Maddox leaned against the metal table, unwrapping a granola bar like he had all the time in the world. The TV in the corner played footage from a previous rotation. Muted now, just heat-map silhouettes. Darting between barriers, Laird sat across from him, feet propped on a crate. You really going through with it? Maddox didn't look up. Going through with what? Laird scoffed. Don't play dumb. I saw your face on the beach. Maddox took a bite, chewing slowly. She humiliated me in front of 50 recruits. She followed protocol. She weaponized it. His eyes finally met Laird's. You think she gets to roll in here with her sealed file, skip the dirt, bark orders like she's Moses on the hill, and we just salute? She's command. And we're the backbone. That means we don't let someone get to the top without earning it here. A silence fell. One of those stretches where neither man needed to say the rest. Everyone in that room had been through the grinder, broken bones, sleep deprivation, psychological evaluations that cracked grown men in 3 days, and yet somehow this quiet, stone-faced officer had slipped into the top slot without a single visible scar. Maddox had seen it before. Officers who came in clean, no mud on their boots, no calluses that told stories. They didn't last. They folded under the first real test. Or they got transferred before anyone could measure them properly. But this one? She hadn't flinched yet, hadn't complained, hadn't even raised her voice. That made her either bulletproof or hiding something. And Maddox didn't believe in bulletproof. Just rattle her, Laird said finally. Right? No damage, just shake the pedestal a bit. Maddox nodded once. No bruises, no witnesses, just pressure. Pressure makes people reveal what they're hiding. He pulled up the digital layout of the obstacle course on the wall screen. Simulation 3B night rotation. No helmet cams after 2100. That's standard. He tapped the cargo net tower. This rig's still under soft inspection from the maintenance overhaul. Easy enough to swap a support beam with a non-reinforced dummy. Won't show on checklist. She drops a few feet, gets rattled, backs off, learns her place. Laird rubbed his jaw. And if she doesn't? Maddox's smile was thin. Then we make sure someone helps her understand. Just then, the door opened. Trainee Sutter stepped inside, hesitant, his uniform still damp from earlier drills, helmet tucked under one arm. You asked for me, Sergeant? Maddox turned, expression already softening, calculated. Yeah, come in, sit. Sutter glanced at Laird, then lowered himself onto the edge of the bench. Got a task for you tonight, Maddox said, routine stuff. You're going to shadow the tower sequence, help reset the rig after each pass, safety observation, that sort of thing. Sutter frowned slightly. I thought the tower is already cleared for solo run. It is, Maddox said, but new leadership means new oversight. We don't want her thinking we're unprepared, do we? Sutter nodded slowly. No, Sergeant. Good man. Maddox reached into his duffel and slid a small toolkit across the table. Swap the bolt on the mid-beam during the first climb. Just loosen it halfway. Nobody will notice. It won't break. Just drop a little. Scare her. Sutter's fingers curled. And if she gets hurt? She won't. We're instructors, not monsters. Laird added, You want her respect, don't you? She won't respect you unless you make her earn it. That was the line that stuck. It always worked. Sutter nodded once, reluctantly, but he took the kit. As he left the room, the door thudded shut behind him. Maddox leaned back against the table and cracked his knuckles. No one gets to lead without crawling first. Floodlights poured over the course like static sunlight, white and blinding, flattening every shadow into nothing. The obstacle field was quiet except for the low hum of generators and the crunch of boots against sand. Night training at Coronado always ran lean, just one rotation at a time, limited oversight, tight radio control. Lieutenant Commander Rhea Voss stood near the signal flag. Her voice didn't carry, but every word landed sharp. Tonight's run is live contingency sim, time trials, cargo net, breach wall, low crawl, evac drag. Instructors shadow from Quadrant 2. Maddox, Laird, and Sutter stood behind the recruits. Already geared, no cameras this time, no observers either, just a dry run by the book. On paper, Rhea swept the course with her eyes. The gravel looked different. She filed that thought away. The first stage ran smooth. Crawls, vaults, rope swings. A few trainees slipped. One clipped a shin. Nothing unusual, but the anomalies added up. One rope was cut half an inch shorter than spec. A grip post wobbled under load. A timing mat blinked out mid-run. She didn't call it out, just filed it all, one piece at a time. At the tower's base, she called for rotation. Next wave, I'll take lead on the climb. She grabbed the side rails and began the ascent. Hands precise, boots secure, no wasted motion. Halfway up, a jolt. The mid-beam gave way with a loud metallic pop. She dropped fast, 6 feet down the incline, hit hard on her shoulder and rolled. It wasn't far enough to break bone, but it was enough to jar her breath and make the world flash white at the edges. She braced to push off the gravel, but they were already around her. Maddox crouched beside her first. You okay? His tone was concerned on the surface, but his hand gripped her arm a little too tight for comfort. She didn't answer. Laird stepped in next. Shouldn't be climbing without warm-up. That's a liability. Then a boot nudged her hip. Not quite a kick. Need a medic or just some air? He said low. She sat upright, slow but composed. I'm fine. Maddox leaned closer. We're just checking, Commander, making sure you can handle this. The gear out here doesn't care about resumes. Rhea said nothing. That's when it shifted. Maddox helped her up, hand tight under her arm, but drove his elbow subtly into her ribs as he did. Not enough to make her fall, but enough to hurt, enough to send a message. She took it without flinching. Then came Laird again, a sudden leg sweep masked as a misstep. She caught herself but hit one knee. Sutter stood frozen at the edge of the circle. He didn't move. One more voice. Maddox again. This is how we learn, Commander. Under pressure. She rose, pain slicing through her side now, but she stood, 3 against 1. No cameras, no proof, except there was. Her eyes flicked once, brief, barely a motion, toward the tower's upper junction box. Maintenance sensor, motion activated, required by OSHA after the last structural audit. They'd forgotten about it, or never knew it was there. But she had. She'd walked the entire course that first morning, checked every sensor, every backup system, every failsafe that lived in the margins of official inspection reports. They stepped back, laughing like it was part of the game. No visible bruises, no shouts, just controlled pressure, plausible deniability dressed as physical correction. But what they didn't see was her eyes, fixed, focused, counting steps, cataloging sequence, burning every move into memory, because Rhea Voss didn't survive joint ops by panicking. She survived by watching and remembering. The generators wound down just after 2200. Floodlights dimmed one by one until only the sodium lamps at the far end of the compound stayed lit, throwing pale gold arcs across the gravel. The recruits were already dismissed. The instructors logged their debriefs. No one mentioned what had happened. Rhea walked the full course again, alone this time, shoulder stiff, left rib aching when she inhaled too deep. Her flashlight beam skimmed the spot where she had fallen, a small dent in the dust, half filled by boot prints, Maddox's, Laird's, hers, interlaced like tracks of an unfinished fight. She crouched. The metal beam still hung loose, half split at the joint, clean cut through the reinforcement screw. Not wear, not fatigue, intent. She clicked her tongue once, a quiet sound, almost like punctuation, then stood, straightened her back, and kept walking. Inside her quarters, the air conditioning hummed low. She peeled the uniform jacket off carefully. A dark bruise had already spread across her ribs, deep purple fading to yellow around the edges. One cut across her shoulder where the gravel had torn through the fabric. Nothing permanent, nothing that couldn't heal. She set a single ice pack from the medical cooler against her side, then sat at the small metal desk. No lights except for the glow of her tablet. The recording function blinked once. Entry, 2304 hours, she said quietly. Training Simulation 3. Mechanical anomaly. Mid-beam failure. Impact, 6-foot fall, lateral shoulder trauma. Immediate response, 3 instructors. Sequence of contact. Maddox, first touch. Laird, second. Unknown trainee observer remained stationary. No visible witnesses. Suspected manual interference with beam mount. Her tone stayed steady. No anger, no hesitation, just data. She pressed stop, saved the file, tagged it under maintenance log inquiry, then opened a blank notepad. Wrote 3 words at the top: names, motive, pattern. Outside, a passing patrol truck rattled by, headlights washing through the blinds. She leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. A memory crept in uninvited. Another desert years ago. Another ambush. The same pattern of betrayal disguised as teamwork. Different place, same principle. Never respond when they expect you to. Never fight where they can erase it. Rhea closed her eyes, slowed her breathing until the pain fell into rhythm with it. And at 23:30, she rewrapped her ribs in a compression band, replaced the ice with gauze, then stood at the mirror. The bruise was ugly, the stare wasn't. They think I'm their lesson, she said quietly to her reflection. A pause, a hint of a smirk that never reached her eyes. They just became mine. She turned off the light, left the tablet charging by the bunk, and lay down fully dressed, boots still on, mind still running. Outside, Coronado slept. Inside, she didn't. The sun rose over Coronado in thin sheets of amber, slicing across the asphalt between barracks like a silent reveille. The drill yard buzzed early, boots hitting pavement, distant shouts from the PT field, steel on steel from the pull-up rigs. But inside the admin wing, everything ran quiet. Rhea Voss walked in with a rolled training log under one arm and her sling bag over the other. She moved as if nothing had happened. Back straight, gait steady, expression unreadable. If anything, she looked cleaner than yesterday. Sharper. She passed the instructor bulletin board without glancing at it. Her name still hung second from the top, right beneath Maddox, D. At the maintenance office, Chief Alvarez was already hunched over a screen, coffee steaming beside him, a torque wrench balanced behind his ear, like a carpenter's pencil. "Morning, Commander," he said without looking up. "Course gear ran hot last night, huh?" She stepped lightly inside. Noticed a few anomalies. Tower beam gave out mid-run. That got his attention. He pushed back his chair, frowned. "That beam's in pending cert, but it shouldn't have failed. Wasn't red tagged." "Can I see the log?" she asked. Not forceful, just matter of fact. Alvarez nodded. "Sure, pulling it now." He tapped a few keys. The maintenance screen blinked and brought up the entry. Under Course Structure Tower Unit 3B, a digital trail of adjustments appeared: manual calibration, override, 1922, HRS user ID, instar_Maddox, safety lock, disengaged, 1937, HRS override logged by Inster_Laird. Alvarez blinked. "Huh. Expected those?" she asked, voice neutral. "No. That override shouldn't even be accessible outside technician access. Someone must have used an old terminal we haven't scrubbed." She nodded once. "Would you mind sending me a copy of the log?" Alvarez hesitated. "You planning to raise a report?" "Just reviewing my own training files," she said. "But if I needed the data later..." He exhaled through his nose. "Copying it now." She took the drive, offered a brief, silent nod, and left without another word. Before heading to the canteen, she made one more stop. The operations hub, small room, 3 terminals, one always left unmanned during morning rotation. She logged in with her command clearance, pulled the motion sensor data from Tower Unit 3B, timestamp 2241 to 2254 hours, 13 minutes. The file was small, grainy infrared feed, but clear enough. 3 figures circling 1, contact patterns, coordination. She copied it to the same drive, logged out, erased her access trail from the session history, then walked back into the morning sun, like she'd just been checking the weather. Down at the canteen, Maddox sat at the outdoor table with Laird and 2 others, trays out. Empty wrappers tossed carelessly. The conversation was low, but smugness had a way of amplifying itself. "Still walking upright," Laird muttered, watching Rhea cross the quad. "Give it time," Maddox replied. "The ones that act like steel usually crack clean." Across from them, Sutter sat hunched, poking his eggs, saying nothing. Maddox caught his eye. "You did good," he said. "Ran smooth." Sutter didn't reply. His tray was still mostly full. He hadn't eaten. "She hasn't said a word," Laird added. "No report, no complaint, no call to med. It's over." Maddox took a long sip from his water bottle. "That's the thing about officers like her." He stood up and tossed the bottle into the bin. "They don't bark." He started walking toward the field. "They wait." What he didn't realize was that she already had. The announcement went up just after noon. A sheet pinned to the dry erase board outside the operations hub. Live evaluation instructor assessment drill. Time, 1600 hours. Course, Simulation 3B. Field rotation, audit. Lead demo team. Instar_Maddox. Instar_Laird. Trainee_Sutter Observer. LT-CMDR. VOS. Standard text. No fuss, no comms alert. But by 1400, every instructor not deployed was hanging near the quad. Not because they were told to, but because everyone could feel something was off. Maddox stared at the sheet like it was a trick. "Observer?" he muttered. "That's it?" Laird slapped the paper lightly. "Assessment drill, routine. Probably wants to see how her reforms play out under pressure." "Let's give her a show then," Maddox said, already pulling on his gloves. By 1600, the sun leaned west, throwing long shadows across the simulation course. A mobile command van had been rolled onto the edge of the field, standard issue for recording drills. Inside it, 2 SEAL instructors sat at the monitor wall, expressionless. One clicked open the audio feed. Another synced a wireless screen to the big display hoisted on a steel stand behind the staging tent. Recruits began gathering off-duty, forming a silent arc beyond the hazard tape. It wasn't just curiosity, it was atmosphere. They could sense something was coming. Everyone could. Maddox, Laird, and Sutter took position at the course entrance. Helmets on, earpieces checked, posture perfect. Rhea Voss arrived without fanfare. Desert fatigues again. No medals, no clipboard. Just a small data tablet in one hand, and her left shoulder still visibly stiff. Wrapped under the uniform, but unmistakably healing. She gave a single nod to the operations tech beside the screen. Load sensor map. Run data set. Simulation 3B. 2 nights ago. The screen blinked. A real-time schematic of the obstacle course appeared, digital overlays of the structure, timestamps, user logs. It auto-populated with activity, Maddox's name, Laird's, each action clearly time-stamped, beam override, safety lock disengaged, ID verification. The screen pulsed with proof, not dramatized, just documented. A few in the crowd stirred. Whispers began to ripple. Someone in the back, one of the senior instructors, stepped forward slightly, squinted at the screen, then looked at Maddox, then back at the screen. His expression shifted. Not anger, just recognition. The kind that comes when you realize you've been standing next to something ugly and didn't see it. Another instructor turned away. Didn't want to be associated with what was about to happen. Maddox froze, halfway through his harness adjustment. Laird's hand stopped midair. Sutter looked like his stomach had turned to stone. Rhea's voice came through the comms feed, even, calm, quiet. You will now rerun the drill as you did that night. Same rig, same sequence, same teamwork. Maddox glanced toward her. A quick look, like maybe this was still salvageable. Maybe it was just a warning, but her face didn't move. Not a twitch, not a blink. Just watching. Laird stepped closer to him. What is this? He hissed. What is she doing? Maddox stared at the screen, his name repeated, flashing in red. She's not doing anything, he muttered. She's just letting everyone else see. Behind them, the crowd had grown. Senior officers now, 2 commanders, a JAG aide in plain clothes. Watching, listening, Rhea stepped off the platform, walked toward the edge of the mat where the tower loomed. She stopped in front of Maddox, no closer than regulation allowed. The logs don't lie, she said quietly, and neither will your next move. She turned to the crowd, not to explain, not to accuse, but to let the silence do the speaking. Because some takedowns don't come with fists, they come with facts and timing and perfect, brutal calm. The debrief room was ice cold from overworked AC. A stainless steel carafe of untouched coffee sat in the middle of the table like a forgotten prop. On the far wall, the pause screen from the sensor log still glowed faintly. 1 red line, 3 names, 1 timestamp. Captain Reeves stood at the head of the table, arms folded behind his back. His posture was carved from stone. JAG observer Lieutenant Fink sat beside him, tablet open, stylus motionless. Maddox, Laird, and Sutter were seated in a tight row. No uniforms now, just navy undershirts and tension. Maddox's leg bounced under the table. Laird had his arms crossed, jaw clenched hard enough to tremble. Sutter's hands lay flat on his thighs, unmoving. Reeves didn't raise his voice. Lieutenant Commander Voss submitted digital logs, med documentation, and a verified equipment trace from Maintenance Chief Alvarez. All were cross-confirmed by timestamp and operational access logs. He turned the screen toward them, played the clip. Again, the beam override, the safety disengage, then Maddox's ID, then Laird's, then silence. No accident, no fatigue failure, and no way to call this miscommunication, Reeves said. Maddox opened his mouth, but Rhea's voice cut across the room before he could speak. Miscommunication doesn't leave bruises in a formation pattern. Everyone turned. She hadn't been announced, but she was there, leaning quietly against the rear frame of the door, arms still wrapped under her uniform, eyes steady. She stepped forward and slid a printed report across the table. It stopped in front of Fink, The top sheet, color photos of a shoulder bruise and compression injury. Medical log number. Timestamp 2248, night of simulation 3B. Fink flipped through it. Said nothing, just nodded once. Reeves turned to Maddox. You assaulted a superior officer during a live fire prep rotation in front of a witness using premeditated sabotage. Maddox's voice cracked. She had it coming. Reeves's jaw didn't move. Is that your statement? I mean, she came in acting like we owed her respect she hadn't earned. Correction, Reeves said flatly. She came in with rank, orders, and the discipline you failed to model. He turned to Fink. Effective immediately, Sergeant Maddox is relieved of duty. Discharge proceedings begin at 0800. 2 layered. Accessory, sabotage, administrative separation recommended. Then to Sutter. You stood by, but you eventually came forward. Late, but honest. You'll be pulled from this cycle. Officer commission is rescinded. Sutter's throat moved once. He nodded. Reeves tapped the screen off. Dismissed. They stood. No one said a word. No shouting. No denial. Just the dull scrape of chairs and the quiet rhythm of consequences. Outside, the sun sat heavy behind the admin wing, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Word had already spread. Instructors avoided eye contact. Trainees stood straighter. At the far end, Rhea walked slowly toward the edge of the field. Maddox passed her. Not close, but close enough. She didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He just kept walking. Shoulders tight, chin down, stripped of rank, of reputation, of control. And she just kept walking. Forward. Evening dropped slowly over Coronado, painting the course in long bands of amber and shadow. The ocean wind had softened and the voices around base had fallen quiet, the way they always did after consequences hit. The cargo net tower stood still in the center of the field. Repaired now. Reinforced. Nothing visibly wrong, but those who had been there 2 nights ago couldn't walk past it without remembering. Lieutenant Commander Rhea Voss stood beneath it, alone. One gloved hand rested lightly on the bottom rung. She wasn't climbing it, just anchoring, as if to remind the tower, and maybe herself, that she'd outlasted it. Wasn't sure you'd come back here. The voice came from behind. Senior Chief Marin, one of the few instructors not tied to Maddox's unit, veteran, sharp, watched everything. I never left, Rhea said. He stepped beside her, looked up at the rig. Could have pushed for criminal charges, courts-martial, headlines, but you didn't. I didn't need their punishment, she said, voice quiet. I needed the system to remember. Remember what? That respect isn't given when you shout for it. It's returned when you carry it. He nodded. Well, they remember now. A long silence followed, not heavy, just full. Across the field, a squad of new recruits passed in formation. As they neared the tower, one peeled off slightly, just a step out of line, enough to nod at her, then another, then one more. No applause, no words, just small acknowledgments, quiet respect, earned the long way. Rhea let her hand drop from the tower and stepped into the path between shadow and floodlight. Her posture hadn't changed since day one. Straight spine, even breath. Unreadable face. But now, no one was laughing, no one was guessing, and no one, ever again, would mistake her silence for inexperience. Not after what they'd seen. Not after what she didn't have to say. If someone tried to break you just to teach a lesson, would you fight back on the spot? Or wait, and let the proof destroy them instead? And do you think silence, the kind that watches, collects, and strikes at the right time, can end a career faster than revenge ever could? Drop your answers in the comments. We read every single one. Then tap that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new mission. Share this video with someone who still thinks discipline looks like weakness. And by now, your next story should already be up on screen. So go ahead and watch that next. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.